It is the concept of observing yourself. The ability to observe, one of the most important abilities that we can have as a human, because it's the only way. I'm going to just throw out a handful of these, why it's so important. It's the only way in God's green earth we're ever going to not run into a tree. Now, think about this. If you're driving your car and you're just driving and you never observe, how am I doing? Am I in the right lane? Am I going the right speed? Am I headed into cars in front of me? See, self-observation, was it Aristotle? I think it was. The unexamined life is not worth living. I think it was Aristotle. Albie, our in-house philosopher, can correct me on that. This self-examination stuff is basically how we take the next step in life. Yeah, I mean, literally the next step to get to the refrigerator. But it's more than that. It's also ability to observe ourselves to see if we're on the path that's going to get us where we want to get in terms of our vision for our relationships, our vision for our health, our vision for anything else in life. If we can't look at ourselves and where am I and how am I getting there and how am I doing, we won't get there. And it is amazing how little time and effort and focus the average person puts into not only having self-observation and having systems for self-observation, but also developing the skills for self-observation. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let me just ask you a simple question. And many of you are going to say, yep, got that, learned it, do it. I do it all the time, and it's changed my world. Some of you are going to say, yeah, I used to do some of that. I do it every now and then. Some of you say, no, I've never done that. Let me just ask you this question. How many of you have a regular structure, a regular relationship, a regular time period, someplace you go, person you talk to, even software that you use, or something that has some particular areas of your life and where you want to be and what you want to be developing or how you want to be doing in that particular area that you on a regular basis check in with and ask the question, how am I doing? Okay. Well, here's what we know about fruitful people. That's the word I like to use instead of successful. I think the word successful it's got too much baggage to it. It means a lot of times people equate that with money, and money is just because somebody has a lot of money does not, in my view, make them successful. That might mean that they're financially successful. It doesn't make for a successful life. I like the word fruitful because you can be financially fruitful as well. But when we think of somebody being fruitful, we don't just think about it in terms of dollars. We think about a fruitful life, that we have good relationships and good health and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. So think about this. What structure do you have in place to do this? And there's a lot of different ones. Anybody in a recovery group, a 12-step group, they have that. They have a built-in. They go into a meeting every week. And in the context of that meeting, they're evaluating themselves. In fact, the 12 steps themselves are several different constructs that have to do with looking at oneself. You get to the faith part of this, the Bible says over and over and over, observe your ways. Examine yourself, Paul says, to make sure that, you're on the path in the faith. It says to make sure that you are, looking at the fruit. And we have to, to over and over and over ask ourselves, how are we doing in relation, for example, to the law of love, James says. But here's the deal. When we do this, let's go back to the science for a second. When we do that, a number of other things happen inside the human brain. One of them is neurologically, you've just by looking at yourself, you moved into an arena called emotional regulation. That when we're looking at how we feel and naming how we feel, now we've created a space between feeling and action. So that means I can be angry and not yell at somebody if I'm angry and I'm looking, you know what, I'm kind of feeling angry right now. I wonder why. What should I do with that? See, now that's developing more space inside. Or if you look at a temptation, you're saying I'm being tempted. I better, what are my choices here? Okay. Or if you look at other kinds of sometimes, when we get like angry about something or have an impulse or something like that, or even our thinking. One of the things that we know from lots of scientific research is when people want to get out of depression or out of anxiety, they have to get above their thinking and observe their thinking. That's self-observation. Something as simple as an app where you're logging your food for the day, and you're supposed to hit 2,000 calories or whatever, and you're putting that in. Even that act of putting it in makes us observe ourselves, and that actually leads to more self-regulation. It's one of the reasons that I like plans that do stuff like that. So here's the thing. At the end of the year, what a great time to do that. Whether or not you have a program or not, how about as we move towards, we're going to be talking about this over the next couple of days. But as we move towards the beginning of the year, let's look back at this year. And I want you to start this way. I want you to start with, and you can have your own categories. I don't really care what they are. I don't care. What I mean is, I don't care that they all look the same. Everybody does the same way. What I do care about is that the entire set of categories that you pick would include within them the aspects of life that make life really, really, really fruitful. So as you hear me talk a lot, what I will say is my categories tend to be three. I think of life as a pie. There's three big slices. There's our clinical life. How am I doing as I evaluate my clinical life this past year? How have my moods been? Has it been a happy year? Have I had a lot of stress reactions that I want to do better in handling stress? Are there any habit patterns that we would call either habit patterns of behavior you want to change, or even all the way to addictions? Different moods. I think I mentioned that. Okay. Just look back and how have you felt? How's your energy level? What about just regular old health? I mean, you could include blood pressure in here or something like that. Now, within that slice of the pie, that's number one. Number two is relationships. Within that slice of the pie, there would be marriage or parenting or dating or work relationships. There would also be relational skills that we would look at developing. And then on the third piece of the pie, our goals and dreams. How do we, what do we want to accomplish basically? Now, I understand some of you may be going, well, there's a fourth. What about the spiritual part of life? I don't believe that. I don't believe there is a spiritual slice to the pie. I think the whole pie is spiritual. That's why every time I talk about one of these concepts, clinical, relational, or having to do with their goals, there are spiritual realities that affect that, and we need to include that in how we're evaluating. In other words, my spiritual well-being is going to affect anxiety as well as my relationships, as well as my performance. So I would hope that would get included. If you want to put it as a separate category, that's fine. All of that. If you want to put finances as a separate category, that's fine. I tend to put that under performance. But all I care about is this. If you're going to get in a car and that car is going to drive to any significant levels of performance, you need a dashboard. You got to be able to look down and say, how's my speed? How's my oil pressure? How are the RPMs? At least that much, right? Might be good to have a compass somewhere or a GPS or a map. What's your dashboard? So let's just start today as we go through this for the next few days. Let's start today thinking about, what do I want my dashboard to include? Now, in different years, it may include different things in those three categories. For example, if 2 years ago I was really, really depressed, that would have been a high one in my clinical category, what I want to evaluate. So that's why I don't want to micromanage this and giving you any little template that doesn't fit you. I just want you to figure out some categories that you would like to look at in your life. Now, what I do is I take those categories and I convert those into a prayer list and different categories and different things that I focus on each day. So you can do all that too. But I want you to get the categories. Now, the other part of the title here, though, this is very important, guys. Please, please hear me on this. What I'm about to say is very important to the success or failure of our changing and getting better. I think what we have titled this today, the team and I were talking about it before the program. We're going to want to look back at the last year and how you did in those categories. But we want to, here's the title, Looking Back with Kind Eyes. Okay. This is so important. If you evaluate yourself with judgmental, shaming, guilt, anger, toxic eyes, where you look at yourself and go, I'm such a loser. How could I be so bad? How could I just, the way that you would not want to be talked to by any other person? Well, one of the things we know from science is the way you talk to yourself is just as powerful as the way other people talk to you in a lot of ways, in a lot of instances. One of my favorite verses, and this will apply here. In the book of James, it says, when you're stuck, basically, and you need wisdom, it says to ask God. Ask God to help you look at your last year accurately. He says he gives it freely. So the wisdom is promised. But here's what I love about that verse. It says, ask God for wisdom as you evaluate whatever you want to improve or stuck or whatever the trial or whatever it is. And it says that he gives wisdom. And here's the phrase I want you to hear. He gives wisdom without finding fault. Those are kind eyes. Those are kind eyes. God never looks at you and says, you stupid idiot, how could you have done that? No. He'll look at you without finding fault. He'll tell you what's wrong, but that's different than fault finding. Like, you know the difference. It's just gross. So don't be mean to yourself in this, in your evaluation. As Albie, a member of our team, so take a dispassionate look. I said, Albie, that's too complicated a word for me to say. All of that together is exactly what the neuroscientists tell you. If you're going to be mean and judgmental and put you into a toxic pile of heap to do an evaluation, that's not what we want. We want you to be just accepting, like God accepts you. You can accept this because it's going to get better. This is where we are on any given day. So get your categories and just look at, in the past year, where am I? And then we'll talk about next time moving forward into this next year. But let's start with defining aspects of our life that we want to evaluate and look at how they are. Every time I go to the doctor, it seems like she gives me a new category. You got to watch out for, I want to give you this test for, I go, what is that? Well, it's the way your enzymes of your heart go. Are you kidding me? I got another thing to worry about? well, I don't want to overburden you with too many things to worry about, but I want you to worry about enough things to where if you're not paying attention to them, they're the kind of things that could derail us. So really, really important to look at.